Hello, Matt.
Hello, Josette.
How's it going?
It's good. How are you?
I'm doing very well, sir. I'm doing very well.
Good.
I thoroughly
Good.
enjoyed this chat we just had.
Yes, this was a lot of fun. We got to chat with Frances Kelley, an old friend of mine from when we were just little kids. We've known each other for a long time. Really rekindled, obviously, our friendship and our relationship, I would say like 5 or so years ago. She's a very successful, one of the top wedding photographers, certainly in Colorado, but if you look at her work, it's world-class work for sure.
And I told Matt already that I think she's going to be my new best friend. So I'm going to go start stalking Frances after this interview. I am obsessed with her. She is so wonderful. And she has this life of just pursuing the most beautiful photography. Her images are exquisite. Her fine art is remarkable. And she speaks about intuition and following the light and all the delicious, juicy stuff I love. So, this woman is power.
If we were to send a script of all the things we want to talk about, to our guest, that she hit all the marks pretty much.
She sure did.
Yeah, so that was great. But you can check out all of her work. Her wedding work is at frances.photography on Instagram. But she also has a beautiful boudoir business that is at rise.boudoir on Instagram as well, where she has some really, really amazing pictures.
Well worth checking out. And if you are having a wedding in the Colorado area anytime soon, or actually anywhere that you could fly her over, I would definitely consider hiring this woman because she is remarkable. Now that weddings are a thing again, post-pandemic and such.
Right, exactly. It would be worth it to have her flying anywhere for your photography needs. So, well, with that, please enjoy our conversation with Frances Kelley. Hello.
Hello.
It's so lovely to meet you. Oh my goodness. Thank you for joining us.
Yes, it's so nice to meet you too. I've heard so much about you.
And me about you. And I've been learning so much about you online as I've been stalking you for the last few days.
That's great.
Oh, good. Well, I watched your short this morning, so Matt shared that with me.
Oh,
it was amazing. And that was actually the first episode of your podcast that I listened to.
No ways.
Was with Natasha, yeah. So I really enjoyed that. So thank you.
Oh, well, thank you. Oh my gosh. I'm so grateful to anyone who wants to, devour my art. Yes, thank you.
You are so very welcome.
Well, I've been doing exactly the same. Oh my gosh. Your photographs are extraordinary. Absolutely extraordinary. I'm about ready to order that in your fine art section on your website. I'm about ready to order a print of that picture of the trees. I'm so obsessed with trees.
Oh, the one from Ireland?
Oh my God. The way you framed that, I feel like I need that hanging above my bed so I can just be transported every time I look at it. Oh my gosh.
Well, that's amazing. I love that. And I would be more than happy to help you with that.
Oh my God. Yay. Look at this. My life is going to be so much better because of your art. So thank you.
Well, thank you. So where are you? You are in the dark.
I am in my closet. Yeah. So this is not a place you'd want to photograph me.
Okay.
This is how I do podcasts because it sounds better and I hide from my family in here. So yeah, it's become a thing we talk about every week as people sort of come on and are like, what are you doing, Josette?
You're like, why is Josette in the dark?
Really weird. Dark clothes in the dark. Like, what is this podcast? Yeah, this is me in my closet.
Well, it must be a cool closet. I'm just hoping that my dog isn't going to interrupt us too many times. I've given him his CBD treats and he's all sorted, but it's no guarantees.
He is welcome to interrupt. Matt and I are both dog lovers, so yeah, we do not mind dogs.
Jeff interrupts all the time. I was editing the podcast that we just released this morning, and I just couldn't edit out all the barks. I just got exhausted because it was like an hour and a half podcast and Jeff kept barking. And I was like, yeah, you know what? People are just going to have to live with that in the audio, I think.
Right? Oh, okay. Yeah. So I was wondering if how you edited this, if it was, Because the ones I've listened to seemed pretty like fluid, like there wasn't any sort of chopped up moment. So I was stumble over myself if you were going to fix it for me or not.
No, well, I tend to edit out anything like just like little gaps and things, because sometimes with Zoom there's a little bit of a gap in your response and my response or whatever, and so I'll tighten some stuff up like that here and there and edit out some of Jeff's barks, but that's about it. Otherwise it's pretty long form.
Okay, all right. I like it.
Yeah.
Well, I think this is such a cool thing that you guys are doing, so I'm honored to be here, and thank you for inviting me. And
oh my gosh,
well,
of course.
thank you.
Here we are.
Yeah. Give me just 1 second, you guys. I need to my heater just kicked on for some reason. Let me go turn that off so it's not blasting into the mic.
Blasting heat.
Yeah.
No problem.
Do it.
Well, hopefully you can hear me okay. We had talked about possibly getting a microphone, but Matt said the computer would be okay this time.
Yeah, you actually sound fine. I mean, I think you sound great. Yeah.
Good.
I love how your frame is so symmetrical. I'm like, you have to, it's so obvious you're a photographer, because it's like the way you've set that frame up it's so soothing to look at. It's like everything is proportioned and perfect.
There are a lot of lines happening around me, so you're right about that. I was like,
it's very soothing.
Where are we going to go? That's center.
It's so good. Oh, no.
Yes, symmetry is one of my little OCD components as a photographer. I get very upset when things are not like centered or like straight.
But I feel like that's why it's so interesting when you watch photographers who are obsessed with symmetry, because it's such a soothing, calming feeling to sort of take that work in, because it's just like so pleasing to the eye when things have that perfection to them,
Yes, I agree. And the inverse is true as well. When things are like off, or lines are a little askew, or the horizon's just a little bit off, there's nothing that will create more anxiety for me than like a horizon line that is not quite straight.
Oh my God, that's so good.
That's so interesting. Not to get into the photography weeds right away, but we may as well. What is your take, I'm curious, on editing like in camera in terms of, the lines, the symmetry, how far in you are on a subject? Do you approach it that it has to be done through the viewfinder and you don't crop your photos at all or center it? Or are you happy to go into the post process and make those sorts of adjustments to your photos?
Well, I would tell you that there's sort of a two-part answer to that question. Mm-hmm. So first of all, I do my best to crop and frame in camera. It's really my goal to have the image coming out of the camera as close to my vision as possible. That being said, especially on something like a wedding day, when things are happening really quickly, a lot of times I won't be able to get to quite the right spot. So like, for example, when I'm shooting a ceremony, it's really the only part of the day that I pretty much have to use the zoom lenses. Otherwise, I prefer to use prime lenses. But with the zooms, it kind of allows me to get, closer or farther without having to, move up or down the aisle. But that being said, it's still, sometimes I'm not quite where I want to be. So I will go then into my Lightroom afterwards and I'll do some cropping. But usually it's pretty close. What I will do a lot of, though, is straightening. So even when I think I'm shooting straight and I have straight lines, and it'll happen to me a lot during my boudoir shoots because I'm shooting in that studio space where I have so many lines and so many like architectural components that I can see what's happening when I do the photo, that those are the shots that even though I think I'm shooting straight, if like the bed frame is a little like askew or those big tall windows, if I get the lines on those are not quite straight, I will always go in and just give them just a little bit of a tweak. So that's happened over years. I feel like as the years have gone by, I've gotten a little bit more OCD about those types of things. Back in the 15 years ago, there was this whole, I don't know if it was trendy or what, but it was a lot of shooting on an angle. Like horizon lines would be way, 45-degree angles off. That's not such a thing anymore. So either it needs to be intentionally off or it needs to be straight. for me personally. So
Yeah.
whether I'm doing that in camera, the goal is to do it in camera, but a lot of times that just is things are happening too quickly. Or when I'm working with a boudoir client, for example, like I'm trying to really focus on them and paying attention to making eye contact with them and staying kind of in it with them. So a lot of times the background will go a little, like will get a little lost for me. And also I found I find myself shooting vertically a lot. And even though the cameras, you can turn the grip so you can hold it like you're shooting horizontally instead of vertically. But when I turn my arms, I don't know if I get tired or lazy or what happens, but I find the verticals to be always just a little off, which so I spend a lot of time straightening images.
Well, there's such an element of director, because Josette's also a film director. And so being a photographer for boudoir in particular, and things like portraits, and especially when you're doing weddings and groups and engagement sessions, you're a director coaxing things out of the subjects, out of the people who you're taking the photos of. That in and of itself is as exhausting a job as any, let alone trying to make sure that your horizon line is straight. Precisely.
And I would say what the director role piece always takes over. I mean, working with people, if I'm more focused on the background and the horizon line than I am the people, that photo is going to be terrible. So I can fix the horizon line later. What I can't fix is the moment with the humans where I lost them because I wasn't paying attention to them.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's what was so amazing, like poring over your photographs and just like, soaking in all your magic these last couple of days. Is just the thing that I noticed that was so obvious all the time is that your subjects are so comfortable. And I think so often, I mean, I know everybody's happy on their wedding day, sure, unless you're really, marrying for money, which good luck to you. But most people are happy on their wedding day, and so obviously it's easy to get a happy photograph. But in a boudoir picture, a lot of times women definitely do feel very uncomfortable. And I understand that it's a way for women to learn how to become more comfortable and to learn how to, express that aspect of themselves that often doesn't get a lot of airtime. But it's fascinating to me, even across the board, wedding, portraits, boudoir, all your subjects just seem so comfortable and so just like open, and I think that must speak to who you are and what you're doing behind the camera. Could you talk a little bit about that? Like how do you achieve that magic?
So it's kind of a running joke in my house that that's my superpower.
Oh, well, there you go.
Just being able to do that. And honestly, I don't know. I think about this and sometimes I wonder, like, is this coming from, as a child, was I sort of groomed to be a people pleaser to the point that I've always just been able to sort of figure out what people need from me? And I'm not sure. I'm sure we could probably go into some therapy on all of that. But I do find there's this sort of intuitive quality that I've always possessed where I can, and not to say that it's fake, because it is generally very, very genuine, my connection to people. But I think that's something that I just really, I want to know about people, and I'm genuinely curious about them, and I'm genuinely there to try to bring out, their confidence and have them see themselves the way I see them. So, I mean, we're all our own worst enemies, but for the most part, no one else is going to treat, people are going to not treat themselves or with even their internal dialogue the way somebody else would treat them. And so, especially with the boudoir clients, like I never know what I'm going to get. Typically, I'm meeting these clients for the first time when they walk in the door. So I don't know how old they are, what their backgrounds are, where they're coming from. A lot of times they're getting married or it's a birthday. And sometimes I'll have like a general understanding of what the goal is with the photos or who's going to see them or who's going to get them or what they're for. But ultimately, connecting with people is the thing that I feel like has made me a successful photographer over the years, regardless of what it is that I'm shooting. So I don't know how or where that comes from exactly, but I've had it since I was a little kid. It was something that was part of just growing up and going through school. And I would never say that I was really like the smartest kid in the room, but I was always the kid in the room who could figure out what the teacher needed. So I was like a straight A student, not because of being like some sort of a genius. Honestly, I can't recall things that you would think would be normal to recall from education, but I do know that I was able to like somehow have this photographic memory and like figure out what the teachers and what people needed and then just deliver that, and it always worked out good. And I feel like that has followed me into my career as a photographer too.
It's so strange because it's so often we're talking about that sort of people pleasing thing, because I am a recovering people pleaser, and I think that it's like it's so often a thing that we look at negatively. Well, I certainly have, where I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to stop pleasing people, because it's hindering my own, I don't know, stepping into my power or embracing my own desire. But it's so funny that you're spinning it and saying it as a positive thing, and how it's actually informed your superpower, which is remarkable. I suppose if it's not running your life in the way that's holding you back, but if you're letting it inform your process, like, oh my gosh, yes, of course, that makes so much sense.
Yeah. And I mean, and I'm with you, Josette, in terms of like, I have had to learn how to, turn it on and off. So I'm not people pleasing all of the time, but when I come into a shoot, it's very helpful. Yeah. To be able to, understand what it is people want almost just immediately, or sense that if they're somehow uncomfortable, like kind of, I'll go down a little bit this way, or I'll go a little that way, or just kind of like work with them to figure out what it is they need to be comfortable. I mean, some women want me like cracking jokes, and that's what gets them comfortable. Other times it's like, I just need to kind of pepper them with compliments or tell them how, that they're doing great. Even like normally and I go back and forth about this. So I don't always show people photos from the back of the camera, because a lot of times they'll look at it and they'll immediately go to what their insecurities are. But other times, if I have someone who's feeling like, I feel like they're insecure about what's going on, if I show them, I'll kind of quickly just look and say like, oh, that's a great one. And I'll just show them one photo, the back of the camera, and they're like, oh, it's like something clicks, like, okay, I get it. Right. Like, because they don't understand what is in the frame, what I'm capturing. They just feel like, oh, this camera pointed at me, that's awkward. So a lot of times if I will share just one image with them, that will, release the pressure. So it just depends on who I've got, and I have to figure that out sort of on the fly. And I don't always get it right immediately, but it's usually kind of a working process. And the other thing I've learned too is like, I always start with sort of a warm up outfit when we're talking about boudoir now. So on a wedding day, hopefully I've already had the warm up with them at the engagement session. So I already sort of know who I'm dealing with. Yeah. Not always. That's where it gets a little tricky. But with weddings, there's so many people. And sorry, I'm kind of jumping around, but
please.
I love jumping around.
You've got moms and sisters and bridesmaids and, all these different personalities that you're trying to manage all at once. And I feel like that's where I get exhausted at the end of a long wedding day. It's, yes, I've been on my feet for 8 hours. Yes, I've been carrying a lot of gear, and all of that is true. But really, it's the mental gymnastics of all of the different personalities that I'm managing on a wedding day that is really
and you're also managing all those different personalities, like usually at their worst, dare I say, because like everybody's just so stressed out. I do not know why weddings have to be so stressful, but anyway, they always are. So everyone's usually at their most hyped, their most dramatic. Mom and daughter is usually having a thing, it's just the dynamic is a nightmare. Like I have so much like respect for the fact that you're able to do that. Like I think it is one of the scariest jobs on the planet. I know that I'm sounding dramatic, but it really is. It's high stakes. My gosh,
it is high stakes.
Women can be hectic, and I'm like, that is like the highest stakes day, for most women. It's wild.
It is. And it does. And that definitely translates. And even 20 years later, I still get nervous.
Oh, right. I don't blame you.
I just like, I'll still have total anxiety dreams, where my cameras aren't working or I forget batteries or just, it's like the dreams you used to have in college before finals or something. Like I still have that, which to me, I think as long as I'm still getting anxious before a big wedding, it means I still care.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of at a point where it's like, if I stop caring, then it's time to just stop doing it.
Right. Yeah. And it's so interesting too, because because I've been on a lot of shoots, all different sorts with you. And you know, you are always maintaining this attitude of positivity, smile on your face, engaging with all the people. And that was so powerful for me the first couple of times we worked together, because it was clear that you knew that you were going to get the best stuff as long as every time someone looked at you, you were happy. You were enjoying yourself. That seemed to be very important right out the gate. At least I noticed it right away.
I would say that it's interesting that you say that, because I joke about it being the horse and pony show, like or the dog and pony show, whatever it is. Like I have to sort of like turn it on, and I'm not allowed to be in a bad mood. I'm not allowed, like I'm not even allowed really to be in an introspective, creative space, even though sometimes I think if I could not have to be the face of the director while I'm taking the photos. So it's it's a really interesting career path, the weddings. And if I'm having an off day, I have to figure out how to turn it off, because it's really the way that I'm able to get what I'm able to get out of my clients is by sort of being that mirror. So if I'm smiling at them, they're smiling back at me. People can't help it.
Yeah.
So, and I do that with my boudoir clients as well. I'll sort of almost mirror the faces that I want them to give me. So if I smile at them, they smile back, which is not always what you want. Big cheesy grins, So, so sometimes I have to like tone it down, or like hold the camera sort of in front of my mouth so they can't see me smiling.
Oh my gosh, that's
maybe
so
I could
interesting.
get them to tone it down just a little too.
Yeah.
So wait, so you said 20 years. That first of all, that's hard to believe, because you look like you're 25 yourself. So I don't know how you've been shooting for that long. But anyway, so how did this? What is this 20-year journey involved? How did you get into photography in the first place?
So I mean, if we're going to go all the way back, I was a pre-law major. So I had taken the LSAT. I was on my way to law school. That was sort of the plan. And during those last couple of years at CU, I found a photography course that was all film in the darkroom. It was just something to have a little bit of a creative playtime for me. And I really fell in love with it. So when I graduated from college, I had met my first husband. So I had met this young Kiwi man, and we had fallen madly in love, and he wanted me to fly out to his family owned a resort in Fiji. So when I graduated from college, the plan was to go to law school, and he was like, no, don't go to law school, come to Fiji. So I was like,
why not?
Fiji, law school, I'm going to Fiji. So, against all of the, better judgments of my family, et cetera, I went to Fiji. And so while I was over there, it just became clear to me that I really didn't want to go to law school at all. There was zero part of me that wanted to do that. That was more like I wanted to do something that I felt my family wanted me to do, or that would make them proud. And being an artist wasn't really on the list. Yeah. So in my mind at that time, photography and art were sort of the same thing. And they still really are. It was just more of in my brain, I wanted to take beautiful photos of landscapes. And, I didn't really know how I was going to make any money doing it. I just knew that I was being called to take photos. So while I was abroad, I took a lot of photos and had no idea what I was doing. And they would all come back and they would all be terrible. It wouldn't look anything like they looked in my brain. So I started looking into photography schools when I was there, and realized that I just was being called to be a photographer. So I came back to the United States. I toured a couple of different schools, and one of the schools was Brooks Institute of Photography out in Santa Barbara. And I went out there and I fell in love with Santa Barbara. I fell in love with the campus, and that was it. I moved home and I just said, I'm going back to school, but it's not law school, it's photography school, and off I go. So I took that education, was basically my post-degree, my postgraduate, because I had already graduated. And I took it really seriously. I mean, I really took each class as an opportunity to create portfolio pieces, and I learned so much. So while I was going to school there, I did a lot of landscape photography. I did a lot of industrial photography. I sort of dabbled in all the different field, because I was trying to figure out a way to then have this be a profession, and not just be a starving artist.
Yeah.
So when I was sort of finishing school, I had two jobs. I was working for a photographer in Los Angeles. I was his basically studio manager / retoucher. He was a commercial guy. And he partnered with a celebrity photographer named John Russo, who still is like really a big deal in LA and does all the celebrities. So I got to see sort of the commercial world and the celebrity portrait world in one studio. And then on the weekends, I was working with the wedding photographer. And in my mind, the commercial route, the celebrity route, that was so much more glamorous. And that was where I was leaning. The weddings was more just, I needed some extra cash on the side. So it's interesting how it ended up, because as I progressed through my education in the commercial world, I realized that the photographer did not have a lot of creative control. There was art directors that were directing the whole thing. The photographer was the monkey that was pushing buttons and setting up lights. Well, really, the assistants were setting up the lights and pushing the buttons. The photographer was just sort of like doing not a whole lot. And then there was the retoucher who would go into the images and fix them, finish them, make them perfect. So all of a sudden, I'm watching the photographers not have a lot of creative control in these types of situations. And also there was just a difference in the relationships with, models and art directors. And, it was just, it wasn't necessarily a happy place to be. There was like a lot of weird stuff between models and photographers and, the models and the retouchers. And I can't say that it left me I never left there with like a lot of joy. Yeah. And on the flip side, I was working with this wedding photographer who was making tons of money, had this great little family, lived in Santa Barbara, was shooting weddings, and just like always happy. And it was just such a difference in like the jobs that it kind of took me a while, but I realized like, you know what, like this lady has it made. She's working with happy people. Now, now that we've gone a little further down the road, I know a little bit more than I did at the time. And it's not all, rainbows and roses, but generally you're working with happy people. Generally you're working with people who are feeling good and smiling and want to look good. Right. So they're working with you. And that whole, only working on the weekends gig. Well, we know how that really goes, but it's not necessarily. But in my mind, it was like, I can only work on the weekends.
Right.
So as I was kind of making moves to decide what I was going to do as I was finishing school, I decided that I was going to be a wedding photographer. It was something that I took to very naturally. My mentor gave me a lot of compliments, and she was using my images to sell her work. And so she really helped me build that first portfolio and kind of sent me on my way. So,
That's
and at
amazing.
the time too, it was really a matter of like, how am I going to make money as a photographer? And the path through weddings seemed, quite frankly, it seemed easier. The whole commercial world was a big world, and you started at the bottom.
Yeah. I think it's such a specific personality thing too. I feel like the person who ends up in commercial photography versus wedding photography, it feels like you followed your soul, which is so wonderful. You weren't following the allure of what's glamorous. You were following what's beautiful. And I think that's in some ways so much more wonderful,
Oh, thank you. Yeah. And that feels right. I think I wanted sort of the glamorous photography job, but it just really didn't pull me in.
Well, it's funny too, because I sometimes feel like that world it's pseudo beauty. It's like, it's what we've deemed as beautiful. It's what we say is attractive and appealing. And it's what we've it's what money says is attractive and beautiful.
Yeah. It's not real though.
It's not real. Whereas if you look at wedding photographs, like that is real beauty, because what you're seeing is love, and love is beautiful. So I think it's like, by that very definition, you're spending your life in the pursuit of capturing beauty, which, my gosh, like, isn't that just such a wonderful thing to be able to say? Like, it's so dreamy. I love it. I'm interested to know, like, because you say you just sort of, you were talking about how you were wanting to pursue this career as a lawyer at one point, and then, were able to just let it go and follow the Fiji dream. And I'm interested to know, I mean, you made it sound quite easy, but was that easy when you were just sort of going against what your family had kind of expected of you?
No, I mean, it definitely wasn't easy because I had two very loving, very supportive parents. And so to kind of I was the oldest of three girls. So I was really the first one I went against the grain in so many ways. I mean, I don't know how much time do we have, but
we got a lot.
You know what I mean? So I think those were the early days of me going against the grain of what it felt like my family wanted me to do.
Yeah.
So, looking back, I think ultimately they always just wanted me to be happy. But I feel like they thought choosing a profession and a career that would have more security was what was going to be the thing that would make me happy. Right. So, so me saying, you know what, I'm not going to law school. I'm moving away. I'm going to go chase this boy across the Pacific Ocean. They were fairly horrified by this choice. But at the end of the day, there was that love and that trust there that they were able to let me go and encourage me to follow my heart. So I do feel really lucky in that. But it definitely wasn't easy. And then I continued to sort of go against the grain. And even almost to this day, right? I live in the middle of the city, half a block off Colfax. I'm pretty sure my parents would not choose this location of the city for me if they had their own ways about it.
So Josette, where she lives, it's sort of a notoriously kind of rough street called Colfax in Denver, and a lot of unsavory activities and such. Yeah, very.
Oh my gosh,
but it also
this.
happens to be one of the oldest, neighborhoods in the city, and so the homes there are old and beautiful. And so I don't know if you noticed, but the studio that Frances has is at their home.
Oh, right.
And it used to be the Rocky Mountain Art
School of Art and Design.
School of Art and Design. Yeah, so it's this beautiful, sort of half A-frame, sort of all glass. It's a stunning place, but it's amazing because it was built as an art school at one time.
Yeah, it was an art school in the 70s. So this house was built in 1888, and it's kind of an old brick home. And I've got, apartment buildings on one side and a lawyer's office, and then another apartment building, and then Colfax is right there. So, on one end of the alley is a liquor store. On the other end of the alley is a religious kind of, they give out food and stuff. So in my alley where I have clients coming and going, it's sort of a thoroughfare of always, I just have to kind of wonder what's going on back there. But I don't ever feel unsafe.
Right.
So part of that is I have a big Doberman. We've got signs all over the place, be careful of our big scary Doberman. He's not scary, but don't tell anybody that.
They never are. That's the thing. Those dogs are always just so delightful.
But it was the studio space was this dream space. Matt's been in it. It was when we found this place, I didn't care where the house was, so, but I think every family has to have one black sheep. So I guess I just, usually they're not the first one.
There's something really wonderful too about doing rebellious things, because I feel like they, in some ways, test the bonds of the relationship, and I think there's it's such a wonderful thing to do as a child, because all you're doing is putting faith in your family that they will love you regardless. And I think it's really magical to do that. I kind of wish I'd tested the bonds of my relationships a little bit more earlier on, because I was playing it perfect for a little while there, a little too long. But it's amazing to know people that do sort of venture out, and you see this expansion happening, and it's just gorgeous. Even now you're living this dream situation, but it's because you've been brave enough to sort of push into this space, that your family or your clan might be like, I don't know so much about that. It's wonderful.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I guess I'll never know what they say about me behind closed doors, but
All good things, I'm sure.
but I've managed to, and it hasn't been a straight path. I mean, I've definitely been, I've woven around and gone around the block and one step forward and two steps back. And so it's not been smooth sailing and hasn't all been easy. But when I think back on my path, like I wouldn't change it. Even the hard stuff.
I'm really curious about, we talk a lot about process and we certainly will, but, you built a business in photography way before Instagram, way before social media and photography, and became something that you could just easily post and send out ads and do all kinds of stuff. How did you build the business then initially in such a strangely, just completely different time for being sort of an entrepreneur in a visual medium like this?
1000%, it was all about relationships. So I landed in Denver in 2004, and I had this little portfolio that I had sort of created with this other wedding photographer in Santa Barbara. And I had hired some models and put together this like styled wedding shoot.
That's so great.
And
Nice.
I made an album, right? So I had sort of photos as a second shooter from this other woman's weddings. And then I didn't really have enough content to build a website or make an album. And so before I left California, I hired some models, 2 females and a male, or maybe there were 3 of them. I can't remember exactly. And I did this styled shoot, and I made this book. So when I landed in Denver, I just started calling around and finding out who was at hotels. And it's really interesting because as I think back on it, it was really one relationship. So I met the girl who was the catering sales manager at the Oxford Hotel in Denver. And now the Oxford Hotel was not one of the big bougie, it was kind of a smaller scale wedding venue. But she and I connected when I brought her my, one album that wasn't even a real wedding. And she decided that she loved me, and she fed me 20 weddings that first year.
Oh,
Wow.
I mean, everyone that I talked to hired me. I was also severely underpriced.
Right, I understand that.
I didn't know. So I was a smoking good deal.
You were great, but you were also a good deal. Yeah.
I was great, but I was a better deal than I was.
Yeah.
I didn't really have experience. So I shot probably 30 weddings at the Oxford that first year.
Good
and
gosh.
I met different florists, and I met different, planners, and I really met a very wide range of people in the industry at that venue because of this one person.
Wow.
That's
and
amazing.
so she encouraged me to join a networking group, which I did. And I met people that way as well. And here's the other interesting thing. I was the new kid on the block. People like the new person, right? It's like, oh, new, shiny. Who's that? I was in my 20s. I was, bouncy and fun. And I swooped in with my little book. And then I started shooting weddings a lot, started to grow my skill set, started to grow my network. And then the same person moved and got a job at the Ritz-Carlton when the Ritz-Carlton Denver opened. And she took me with her. So now all of a sudden I'm the main photographer for the Ritz-Carlton Denver and the Four Seasons. And, I started to kind of gain some clout there and meet planners who were doing higher budget weddings. And so as I look back, I just think, isn't it so interesting? Like one person can have such a profound effect on your life and business. And she's still one of my dearest friends to this day. And she's not even in the wedding industry anymore. She's still in the event world, but more corporate. And that's how. I mean, I had a website that was a Flash. You guys remember Flash websites?
Oh my gosh, yes.
Right? That were like basically a blank page to Google.
Yeah.
No SEO, nothing. It was just like blank. So for the first 15 years of my web business, I didn't even have like any SEO happening.
Right.
It was 100% relationship based.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how it was all. And I still, even in the day of the Instagram, you know, and I struggle with that because I think I have like 2,500 followers or something, where a lot of my competitors are like 10,000, 20,000, 30,000. And I'm starting to put a little more energy into trying to make that happen, just because I feel like it's sort of a thing, and I don't want to become irrelevant because I'm not also doing that.
Yeah.
But even to this day, it's the relationships I have with planners, event people, venues. That's how I continue to get business. And yes, referrals from past clients, but more so it's the people in the industry.
We hope you love listening to the Makers podcast as much as we love making it.
And if you would like to show your support and keep us going and keep us making magic and bringing these gorgeous creative conversations to you, perhaps you'd consider becoming a contributor to the Makers podcast. If you'd like to do so,
visit anchor.fm/themakers/support to get started. And now back to the show.
But I also feel like, you know, with Instagram and stuff, I mean, I feel like if the person is wanting somebody who's Instagram famous as a photographer, they're probably not your people, right? Like, I feel like there's a wholeness to you and a groundedness to you that I feel like it is based on deeper connection than is just what's flashy on Instagram. I mean,
yes,
tell me if I'm wrong,
and
but that's kind of what I'm
is,
sensing.
And I kind of go through phases with Instagram. I'll post a lot and then I won't post at all. But and really, it's just best when I have someone help me do it, and they just consistently do it for me.
I can't wait for the day. Yeah, I feel you. I'm like, if I never had to be on there ever again, I would not be sad.
And it's funny too, because I had to separate it. So I have a personal Instagram, and then I have the Rise Boudoir Instagram, which is sadly lacking attention right now. And then I have the Francis Photography Instagram. And so in my personal Instagram, I almost had to unfollow every wedding related account. So that I have a space to go online that is not inundated with my competition. And there's because I'm just the same as anyone. You start getting online, you start comparing yourself to people. Oh my gosh, this planner posted this beautiful wedding. Who'd they use for the photographer? How come they're not using, you know, you start to kind of go down this rabbit hole that never feels good. It just doesn't. So I've loaded up my personal Instagram with travel pages and Doberman pages, and, all art and crystals and, you know, witchy stuff. So.
Yeah. Oh my God, you're so my people. That's what I do. I like sit there and look at puppy pictures. And my husband's like, we have a dog. Why are you looking at other people's puppy pictures? I'm like, because it makes me so happy. Yeah. Like, it's all I want to do.
Dogs and beautiful places. I could just look at those accounts
Me
all
too.
day.
Me too.
Food. I like to look at food.
That's so funny you mentioned the witchy stuff, because I was like, I thought when you were saying that you studied in Santa Barbara, I was like, there's something about that place that has that witching feeling to it. Like, one of my favorite witches of all time, Amanda Yates Garcia, I don't know if you know her, she's known as the Oracle of LA. She's the most phenomenal witch. She has a book called Initiated, which is just, it's extraordinary. And she's a practicing witch in Los Angeles, and she's studied in Santa Barbara. And it's so funny because when we started talking, you started talking about that. I was like, you're so giving me the same vibe. And I was like, I wonder if there's a witchy thing going on there. I'm very glad to know there is. It's very delightful.
There sure is. Oh, yes, there sure is. I don't know if you can see it behind me, but no, we've got crystals all over the place in this house.
Oh my God, yay.
I love that. We're talking about the Instagram aspect of things, where you're seeing like competition and things and comparing and all of that. What inspires you though, like artistically, you know, when it comes to the photographers or photography and things like that? Because I know, like, personally, I don't I make a ton of commercials right now. I don't really watch a lot of commercials. I'm getting my inspiration from many, many, many different other places, not necessarily from other filmmakers per se. What gives you the inspiration to try a new shot or a new look or perhaps like a new, lens or something like that?
Well, I would say it's similar to you, Matt. I see other photographers. I follow a lot of them through my business page. And so I do see their work. But it's not really where I'm going for inspiration. Weirdly, I get a lot of inspiration from movies.
Oh,
watching
I love
movies
that.
and just the way the way the lighting is done. So I love seeing composition and lighting in current movies. And I feel like I take notice of those things. I think, ooh, I want to do a shot where I have like kind of this like blue, moody, and Josette, even like like the short that I watched, I was like, ooh, this like dark, moody, like kind of like dark bathroom situation. Like I don't know. I'm constantly thinking of how to recreate scenes that I see in video and in films and in movies.
That's so cool. I love that.
Not necessarily stills.
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah.
And I feel like sometimes the inspiration really just comes in the moment. And it's really hard for me to plan like what my shot's going to be. I do know some photographers that will scout an area before a shoot and they'll be like, okay, I'm going to do a shot here. The LaPlantes who did our wedding, they are very much like that. They will find a piece of glass and they're like, okay, I'm going to do a reflection in this piece right here. And I found that doesn't ever really work for me because I don't know what the light is going to be. I'm never there at the same time, or even if I am at the same time, there's clouds or there's sun or it's not exactly the same. So I really find that my inspiration comes very much in the moment, depending on what is happening with the light and where I am. So sometimes I'll think I'm going to do a shot, but then I'm like, ooh, the light's better over there. Oh, no, I'm going to be over here. And I'll just completely like switch gears and not even do the thing that I originally thought I was going to do. So I try to just be very, in my body and in my brain and connected intuitively to what's happening with the light as well as what's happening with the client. So more so even than background or what's going on in the background, it's about the light for me these days. And
I noticed that I think you really create the atmosphere or first, and then that allows you to improvise, like in your studio in particular, you have all of your set areas, essentially, you have the light kind of in a consistent spot, and that allows you to play. Even when we go out on location in weddings, when we did that engagement shoot in the mountains, you knew you wanted this backdrop, this thing, this here, but it wasn't until you get there and you realize, okay, now I can kind of play with it because I know where the light is and I know this sort of thing. You kind of give yourself all the elements to allow yourself to improvise once you're there.
Yeah. I mean, and that is, I think, what becomes stressful about, a wedding or engagement is that I don't know exactly what I'm getting into. I have to figure it out on the fly while I'm also managing the humans. Yeah. So,
definitely.
Yeah.
It's so interesting that you're saying like you're basically describing it as like intuition and following the light, which I'm like, that sounds like how I want to live. So it sounds like you're onto something.
Yeah. That's how I want to live too.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
I practice it a lot.
Oh, thank you. I'm so curious to know because for me, looking in on your walk and your profession, it seems like such a lonely solo path because I'm such a collaborator. And I mean, whenever I go to work with loads of people around me and I have people that I sort of bounce things off of and I come up with things together with people. The film you're watching, well, that was, a ton of folks that put all their vibes into that and created something that, yes, was far exceeded what I ever could have imagined in my own brain. I'm so interested to know what this is like as a solo practitioner because you don't have that bouncing off of anybody. So what is this process like for you when you start?
I mean, honestly, that is probably my main complaint, that it's a bit of a lonely job. And, I think that the way I get around that is that I have become involved in the industry. And so I have a lot of people that are my friends that are doing the same thing. I'm friends with other photographers. I'm friends with wedding planners. I'm friends with all sorts of people sort of in the industry. And we plan things. We do things socially. I have a pretty busy social calendar when it comes right down to it, when I really think about it. Yeah. So even though the work is very solo, the life around it is full of people. And on a wedding day, I think I do get to collaborate a little bit because the planner, the florist, like they're creating the vignettes, they're creating the backdrops, they're creating the lighting. And so I kind of use their creativity to then, and then they're looking to me like, please take pictures of all this stuff that we have, spent all this time and money building. No pressure, but don't miss it.
Well, that's one of the things that I think is always been so impressive about your work and your relationships is the florists, the people who do the design aspect of weddings. They love you because you give them beautiful pictures of their place settings, of their, arrangements and stuff like that, which you probably told me this, that a lot of photographers forget.
Yeah, they don't. And I think part of it is just over time, right? So like I've realized the way I'm getting business is because it's not necessarily the brides that I'm making so happy, because usually they're always very happy. And so that's great to have happy clients. You'd think that would be how you get business, but it's not, because vendors, they get married and they move on and then they're in a different place. So it's the planners, it's the venue. So I really I'm making it a point to give them content, especially in this Instagram world. They want that. They will eat that up. So yes, I'm shooting for the client, but I'm also, I have more than just the bride and her family that I'm working for that day. I'm working for the florist. I'm working for the planner. I'm working for the caterer. I'm working for the band. So I'm really trying to view a wedding as an opportunity to give all of these vendors who work so hard content for their websites, for their Instagram. And I feel like that goes a long way. So when I deliver that to them, they remember that.
That's so cool.
So
that's such a beautiful sort of piece of advice to, younger entrepreneurs in a creative field is that, we always talk about it with movies, with actors. You're not auditioning for the movie or the commercial, you're auditioning for the casting people and the director and the people who are going to be making more and more and more and more things. And so that's where it's like, you're not just making something for the one client, you're making something that could be perennial for a lot of different people. And that's what's going to build those relationships and those blocks towards more business in the future.
Exactly. And I think that's where a lot of photographers get, they get all like up in their high horse about their egos kind of get in the way about like what they want to create for their art, right? Like I don't shoot the details. I don't care about that. I just care about the emotion, where it's like, okay, well, that's fine. But next time that planner is going to hire somebody that does care about the details.
Well, there's always this intersection in every artist's life where art has to meet commerce, because we live in a capitalist society. So I think there's this thing where we have to start to go, where does my art intersect with commerce, and how do we make them live together in a way that feels palatable and tolerable and, you know, like something that you're not going to rip your soul out of your chest for. But yeah, you have to at some point.
Exactly. And I mean, I'm not going to miss the session with the bride and groom because
of course
that's the only time to shoot the tables. But if that's the situation, I'm going to send whoever I brought with to help me and be like, okay, I'm going to go do the bride and groom and the family right now. You go shoot the tables so that somebody is taking those photos. And, you know, I like to work with the planner to create a timeline that gives me an opportunity to really shoot those details, because I feel like I do have an eye for that stuff after all these years. And there's a way to make things look even nicer than they really look if you use the right lens and if you are shooting with the right lighting. And it's taken me a long time to figure these things out, but I always try to make time to create content for the other vendors, because that's how I get the next job.
Yeah, it's so smart.
Yeah. So it's not really that soul sucking. I mean, quite frankly, if I can spend 15 minutes in a room, just quiet with the candles and the centerpieces, like that is like my 15 minutes to sort of decompress. Take a deep breath and sort of reset myself for the next half of the day, which then gets wild. So
it sounds like, just even you saying that, it sounds like you have such a great, obviously after all these years of doing this, you've got such a good practice of how to, although you are having to manipulate yourself and be on, like you said, like turn yourself on and be all these things to all these people. It sounds like you found the balance of the way to sort of take these moments and decompress. Like, it sounds like you've developed a great regimen of self-care. Am I right in saying that?
Yes, 100%. So, I mean, and I know myself enough to know that, like, I must not let myself get too hungry. If I get, like, truly, if there's really nothing that will derail me on a wedding day more than going too long without food.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And as photographers out there will know, that can sometimes be a challenge, getting food for the photographers.
It's a huge problem.
Yeah.
And so I have remedies for that. I have bars. I bring things to, hold myself over, because usually the food situation is always challenging, but I'm usually starting 10, 11 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm with these people and shooting all day long. And so when it's now 7, 8 p.m. at night and I haven't eaten anything all day,
oh no,
I'm ready to die. So, so I've had to learn over the years, like, how am I going to sustain for an entire day? Well, I have snacks. I have help. So I'm going to take 15 minutes. I'm going to decompress because I have to, and then I can come back in and do the party. But, I have to find little windows to take a minute, take a breath, and, drink a bottle of water and just kind of come back into my body, because it's interesting to realize how disconnected I can get from myself on a wedding day.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh,
and I know
I'm
it's
sure.
crazy to say this, but so there'll be days when I'm like, I haven't even peed in like 10 hours. How is that possible? You know, so, but you get going on the adrenaline and the day starts to roll. And
I think that's the thing, is you're in the service of everyone else. Yes. And exactly. You don't want to miss anything. So
you don't want to miss anything. There's, like you said before, at some point you're like, it's high stakes, right? You don't want to miss anything.
Yeah. So, one of the things that I learned quickly from you was that the positive side of having boundaries within those crazy, crazy long days, in the sense of taking time for yourself. You don't have to capture absolutely every second of the day. Because I did a few wedding videos, and I had this serious FOMO because I thought I was going to miss a great moment. But the more you do, the more you realize where the important moments are that you have to have, and the timing. And then, yes, having someone with you who can help you, carrying the things or doing whatever. It was so good to watch someone working at such a high level like you do, for me to realize like that I could take a little bit of time to myself, that I could, take a quick break and slam a Cliff Bar.
Now we're going to
exactly.
This part of the dance party is not going to be captured.
Yeah.
It's fine. You're going to have 1,000 in, like, for you too, with the video, it's like, you're going to have plenty of party coverage. It's just not going to be, I'm not going to stand here. And even occasionally if it's like a big party or something, I'll just say to my second shooter, like, I'm going to take 15 minutes. You stay here. Anything big happens, don't miss it. But otherwise, like, hang out, or vice versa. Like, you go take a break. We don't both need to stand here shooting dancing for 4 hours. I mean, I don't want that many photos. They don't want that many photos. Right. Nobody wants that many photos.
Especially because at that point, isn't everybody drunk anyway? Like, the aunties aren't looking good anymore and the uncles aren't behaving well. So let's just not photograph them.
Exactly. I mean, I try to encourage people, always front load the day.
Yeah.
Always front load the day.
Yeah, for sure.
Because that's where you're going to get more quality imagery. Yeah, sure, exactly. The dancing stuff's fun. But
and it's a limited part. It took me 2 weddings to realize that when you're doing video weddings and you get to the dance part, 95% of the video you capture is of girls pulling their dresses up on the dance floor. That was like, and I was like, okay, I got it. Like, now I know what to look for. Look for the guy, the couple that's really in love. Look for the crazy girl who wants to do shots. You got to find the right places, because otherwise you're just going to get a whole bunch of people pulling their pants up, pulling their dresses up. Yeah, because they've sweated their way through the day already.
Yeah, right. Everything's kind of falling. Yeah, I mean, I'll try to get a different vantage point. Like, I'll bring a ladder so I can get up high and shoot down on the crowd with a wide lens, or, I'll get low on the ground and get people's like feet and stuff. But I do try to find creative, because I feel like that's where it starts to get a little long and a little boring for me. Is I've been shooting all day, and now we're just in the party part. Yeah. And the only reason they're keeping me through the whole party is because they're going to do some exit. They're going to do some sparkler thing or some I don't know, streamers, or there'll be some exit situation that they want captured. But then I realize I have 3 hours of dancing and party pictures to take.
Wow,
and that's where it gets really like, that's where it gets hard for me is I'm like, oh, okay. I just have to sort of like find creative things to do. And, or, I'll start messing around with long shutters, right? So I get that drag, or I get that motion. So I guess I take an opportunity to play in those situations, which is kind of nice, because there's not a lot of like chance taking during a ceremony.
No.
I am going to be in the spot to capture the kiss, like period, end of story. And if I am not in that spot and it all happens too soon, there's not much more that will stress me out, like being in the wrong place at the right time.
But like, sorry, could you just do that again? I didn't get that.
One more kiss.
And what's so funny is we once had a first look happen where, and I can't remember who the videographer was that was with us, but he was not ready. And so he wanted them to redo it.
Nice.
The first look.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
second looks.
You want them to like fake it?
Yeah.
Anyway, I was horrified. I was like, I'm going to just I'm out.
Wow.
I'm not doing it twice.
That's terrifying.
I think there are some things where you have to be ready and on your toes. And maybe that's one of the things that keeps me shooting weddings, is that even after all these years, it's a challenge. It's a hard day. Like I have to be ready for anything.
Yeah.
How many of these are you doing? You're doing one a week effectively. Like, are you doing 4 weddings a month?
At this point, I'm doing about 10 to 15 a year.
Wow. Okay. But that's still a lot, though. That's still a lot.
Yeah. So
that's still a lot.
I think I'm going to do right now I'm slated for 10 for 2022. And that's great for me. That's honestly, I shoot about 1 boudoir shoot a week, which I love that. And then the weddings are May to October. There's always, sometimes there's outliers, but they get stacked up. So, once mid-June hits, like my calendar is June 18th, June 25th, July 9th, it's just like that. So
I love that it's seasonal, though. That's what's so great about where you're living. Because, if you were living in LA, you'd have to shoot weddings all through the year, because let's be honest, we'd all be wanting to get married in November because it's nice and cool.
It's not hot, right?
Yeah. So my gosh, it's kind of beautiful that there is this moment of coming inside, doing a little hermit, like resting for the season, and then bringing up like almost harnessing the creativity to come out again and swing it in the summer. Like, I love that.
It's true. Yeah, that's actually what I've made it a point this year to engage in more activities that are just fun and joyful for me. So I love to snowboard. So I've made it a point to go snowboarding this winter. That's more so than great. Whenever I could get away. And I go up to the mountain by myself on a weekday. I ski hard for 2-3 hours, and I'm home by 2:00 to like hang out with the dog and take care of, my little family. So I've been really trying to work in activities that give me joy. Because because I will say this at the end of, 2020, complete shit show. Well, of course, because no one was photographing Zoom weddings. Oh my God. Every which way a wedding could implode.
Yeah.
It
gosh.
did. Yeah. So 2020 was terrible. 2021 was then the makeup year. So by the end of last year, I was so tapped out and so exhausted that there was truly a part of me that thought, I don't know if I can keep doing this.
I bet.
I just am. I am like back against a wall. I am so tired and so depleted. And that's where I realized at the end of 2021, and which is why I have less weddings on the books right now, is because I had to decide. I either have to say no to the jobs that are not right for me, and I have to be confident enough in my pricing to be firm. instead of like, oh, well, I guess I could do this deal. I'm not booked that day. And so I could just take a little less money because it's still better than nothing, instead of wheeling and dealing. I did a lot of wheeling and dealing in 2021 to make up for such a terrible 2020.
I'm sure.
Right.
But really that didn't serve me. Because at the end of the day, I feel like I was just exhausted. And so, yes, I still feel like I delivered beautiful images to people. It's not like, well, they got the short end of the stick, but I just didn't have anything left for myself.
Yeah.
And that was hard. So I came into this year really intentional about the fact that I am not doing that to myself ever again. Wasn't worth it.
It's so important.
And it's not worth it to the other person either, to the client and all that stuff. Yeah. It's about being fair to everybody involved in the end.
Yeah. Well, and also living a good life. I mean, I think at some point we have to realize that, yes, while these things are things that we delight in doing, of course, we're all passionate about our jobs and our vocations and what we do. But at the same time, I'm also passionate about being on the planet and enjoying the landscapes and loving the trees and eating the good food and spending time with my loved ones. Like this is also stuff that I'm here for. I'm not just here for that one thing. So, I think that balance is just so important.
And having the balance then makes me a better artist. It makes me more creative. It makes me ready. When I take time to work out and stay strong and healthy in my body, then I have more stamina. So it's really important to me, and for sure this year, just to have that balance, to do the activities that bring me joy, knowing that come May, June, things are going to get real again. But I want to feel like I'm prepared for that, as opposed to just like, saying yes to all the things is just it's not working out.
It's so important what you're saying, honestly, because I just think that especially there's so many people on this planet living in the system that we live in. We live in a capitalist society where productivity is prioritized over everything, and worth is so much measured on productivity. And I just think it's so important what you're saying, because to let other people have permission to do the same and know that it only makes you better is just, I think it's, oh my gosh, it's the most important information ever. It's the best permission slip you could be writing. It really is.
And
that this doesn't take away, Yeah.
And as like it's like you have to do it wrong a whole bunch of times before you realize, like, okay, this is not working.
Well, I mean, I bet there were a bunch of weddings you had to starve yourself in and not eat the bars and not have the food and the snacks to realize, I need to actually feed my body. Yeah. It takes time. We have to do all these silly things.
Being like ready to like break down in tears because I've been on my feet for 10 hours and haven't had,
They're being like, actually all I need is a snack. I don't actually, that's the reason I feel like I want to cry, because I'm starving. It's nuts. It's so
and also
weird.
Just realizing too, at the end of the day, that I do my best, and I think that's the thing that I've had to get really clear, is that like some weddings, I feel like, I didn't get that one epic shot that I was hoping to get. But at the end of the day, I have to just feel in my heart like I am giving my best always. I'm never not going to give someone my best.
Yeah.
And, as creatives, our best is not always the same. And that's where I get tricky, right? And that's where I have in the past gotten really hard on myself. But I've learned over time that I deliver these albums to people that I'm like, gosh, I really just wasn't having the best day that day, or like the lighting or the timing or whatever was making it challenging. And then the clients get the images and they are so happy and so thankful and so grateful. So it's been this interesting like learning process of like, don't, understand that I'm always doing my best. It's not always going to look the same, and depending on the circumstances, but as long as I'm showing up for those clients with my whole heart, they're usually, and I mean, I say usually, like 99.9%. I think there's like, you can count on one hand in 20 years the number of people who have like had issues with one thing or another over the years. And so it's not very many. People tend to be fairly grateful to have these images, because the other thing is they don't know what didn't happen.
Of course they don't.
Right.
They only see what you give them, which is usually more than they were expecting.
Yeah.
So,
and usually what they get it, like you said, there's more than what they're expecting, because they also don't know what's going on necessarily that you're capturing, because they're so wrapped up with what's going on between, bride and groom or whatever it is. So you're presenting them with some cool things that they're
seeing
didn't expect.
things they had no idea that happened. So they don't. And I think that was where my perfectionistic tendencies have had to I've had to calm them down.
Yeah.
There'll be something that happened on the dance floor that was amazing. Like somebody did a backflip and I didn't quite catch it. Or I caught it as he was landing. Right. So in my mind, I'm like, oh, I can't believe I missed that. Yeah. Well, first of all, no one else even saw it happen. You know what I mean?
Right.
So when I am not delivering this epic thing that I feel like I screwed up and missed, nobody else knows that.
Oh my God, that's so funny. I'm so.
Now, when did?
Oh, go ahead, Matt.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Josette.
I was about to segue to a very different situation. I wanted to know, because you spoke early on about landscape photography as being your first sort of love. And it's funny because when I was looking at all your photographs, it's amazing how I really did pick it up, how the landscape is always a character in your shots. And so I feel like in some ways you've found a way to still be a landscape photographer, just with some tiny little details occupying the foreground. So I'm curious to know, there's obviously this beautiful fine art section on your website, which I'm obsessed with every one of those shots. That the light coming through the Colosseum, oh my God, the eclipse. All of it's mind blowing. They're still in my mind. That's what's so great, about photographs. That. I'm just thinking of them and they are there. I see them. I'd love to know, is this what you do for yourself? Is this the thing that you kind of, is this a way to sort of just have a delicious exchange with your creativity? What is this fine art section of your world for you?
Yeah, the fine art section is and has been what I create for myself.
Oh,
those are the travel photos. Those are the images that I've, the eclipse photo, for example, was so something incredible. That was planned. I did a lot of planning for that shot. But those are the things that really still just keep me inspired. And to be honest with you, that is how I see myself being creative always. I don't know how long I'm going to be a wedding photographer. I'm not going to be a wedding photographer in 10 years, probably. There's probably a bit of a shelf life on this particular part of my career. Yeah. The boudoir stuff, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how that goes. I feel like I could see myself doing that for a very long time. I love that one-on-one interaction with women specifically. That fills me with so much joy to work with women one-on-one and raise the consciousness of their spirit around their bodies. But the travel stuff, the art stuff, that is where I see sort of a long-term creative endeavor. And one of the things I set up as a goal for myself this year was to put a couple of trips in there where I was going with my camera specifically, because that's where it's the first thing to fall off is the work that I do for myself. I don't know that I've added anything significant to my fine art portfolio in a couple of years.
It's so funny because it's the first thing that falls off, but it's literally the thing that I was I need more of these pictures. That was the thing that I was most just into, and I can see that there's so much of you in those shots that it just, and of course it's intuition and following the light. I was like, oh my God, now that I know that, I'm like, of course that's what it is. I see it. It's so magical. Yeah. Please keep making more of them.
That is how I see myself as an artist. Yes, I think, being a wedding photographer is creative, and I am an artist in that aspect of my career. But for me, my true artistry comes out in when I don't have the pressure from someone else. Yeah. It's just comes only from in here, and I'm doing it for myself.
So Matt, I have to ask now, because look how she set that up so beautifully for us.
Yes,
we have to ask. Where do you think your creativity comes from? I mean, you're going like this and gesturing to your heart and saying in here. Is that where you think it's from? Is that what creativity is to you?
You're asking me? Or Matt? Oh.
No, I'm asking you.
Oh, yeah.
No, it's just a question we always come to at the end of every podcast. And so, we love this question because we go back and forth all the time. Is it Is it a muse? Is it your heart? Is it the universe? What is bringing the creativity, or is it coming from inside? We're both so fascinated with that question.
Feel free to go as woo-woo and witchy as you want.
It's a coming together of the environment, the timing, and my heart. So it's when I am at peace inside and outside. There's like a connection that's happening around me and inside of me all at once. That is where my art comes from. Is when I'm really connected to being human in the place that I am, while I'm watching this beautiful sunset, while I'm watching this, freak eclipse situation happening in the sky above me, and I'm in that moment. And I'm creating this piece of art that is so powerful to me because I'm there and I'm seeing it with my own eyes. And for me, the photography piece is a way for me to remember this beautiful part of being human.
It's making goosebumps come on my arms. Oh, I really love that. That's so beautiful. It's so perfect. It makes so much sense. And looking at your work, it's like, yes, of course. Of course, that's what you're doing. Oh, I love it.
I don't know if I ever thought about it that way. And it's like, it completely changes my perspective. Because, when you're right. The best art that you make is when you're kind of at the most peace with yourself. Everything could be tumultuous on the outside, like in your case, in a wedding, or, we're on set or whatever it is, everything is going crazy. But if you're at peace with whatever's going on inside, that really impacts what comes into that lens for sure.
Yeah, it impacts what you see. And for me, like I think I say it in different various places on my website, on my Instagram, it's like chasing beauty with a wild and open heart. So that has been something that's come to me as like, that is my why. Like I'm always looking for what's beautiful, whether it's in nature or in humans or in couples or in families. And so it's the thing that brought me into photography in the first place was this beautiful world that we live in, and seeing this like amazing sunset and the colors that you almost just can't even describe. And so for me, it was like, capturing those moments so that I could remember them and remember remember what that felt like to see that thing or to see that eclipse or to see that sunset or to see that, in Ireland, that lane with those trees.
Those trees.
So I go back to my fine art gallery sometimes too, just to look at it, to be like, oh yeah, this is why I'm a photographer.
It's almost like, it's capturing pure presence, which I guess is divinity in its highest expression, isn't it? I mean, that's what we're trying to achieve effectively.
Yeah, I mean, what are we doing here?
Oh my God, exactly.
We're just here to, love and to experience joy and to be happy. And so for me, realizing and really connecting to the environments around me, and a lot of times that includes humans. But I think that where I find my most serene, most peaceful, most quiet, most connected moments are in nature, when it's just my eyes, what's happening around me with the light, the time of day, the colors. And that's kind of why my work it's true to life. I like my colors to be sort of vivid, but not fake. It's real.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And I want that realness to translate into my work as well.
It's beautiful.
That's one of the things I love so much about your boudoir work is, the people in your shots, the women are not wearing these like audacious and flashy things. They tend to be very simple. In some cases, just even like a t-shirt or something like that. It's so soft. The light is always so soft, and it creates this serenity around it, as opposed to like a Fredericks of Hollywood ad or something like that. There's a serenity, a calmness, a beauty about it that is different from any other photographer who does that kind of work that I've seen.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, that's the goal. It's like the what's what's precious about life and humanity. And I'm looking for that softness, right? I feel like we deal with a lot of hard edges everywhere we turn.
Oh my gosh.
And
yeah.
So, if I can soften down that visually for people,
what a beautiful calling to have, and to have recognized so early on in your life, and to be able to have done this in such an intentional way for such a long time. It's just so magical. I think it really is the height of magic, actually, what you're doing on the planet.
Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. I mean, there are times where I think is what I'm doing, like, does it matter what I'm doing?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it does.
Like, am I doing something that like actually matters? And, that's where you get into that self-doubt, but
no, it matters a lot.
It's nice to have that confirmation.
Matters a lot.
So
I think we all need to be reminded that the world's beautiful, and that there is so much beauty to behold that, and it sometimes takes a person like you capturing an image in such a beautiful, intentional way for us to actually slow down enough to take it in and to be reminded, because everything is so quick. And I think sometimes when an image is so incredible, it forces you to stop and breathe and, and slow, which is just so important. I'm interested to know, because, we obviously have folks listening who are also interested in creativity, or maybe perhaps pursuing a life that has a little more creative magic involved in it. I wonder if you have any tips or ideas or anything you might say to a person looking to live a more creative existence.
Well, I think we're all creators when it comes right down to it. Like, some people say, like, oh, I'm not artistic. And I feel sad for those people, because what I end up thinking to myself is like, well, we're all creators. We're all creative. We're all artistic. It just needs to be expressed in different ways. Sometimes that expression comes through working with your hands. Sometimes that expression comes through cooking, photography, dancing, singing. I feel like there's so many ways to be creative. So I really just think that's a matter of finding something that brings you joy and peace. So, cooking is a great example. So I didn't consider myself a cook for years and years and years and years, but I've found sort of in the last, handful of years, that's something that brings me a lot of joy, and I find a lot of creativity in it. And yes, I will use like sort of guidelines. And I think that's the same with any art. Like, you find out what the guidelines are so that you can then be creative around them, learn the rules so you can break them, basically. And so I find like writing, journaling, I just think there's ways to be creative for almost anyone. It's just a matter of like doing things until you find something that you just enjoy doing. So, a lot of people want to be writers. Well, and then they journal, and it doesn't bring joy. It brings stress. It's like, oh, I have to journal. Well, maybe that's not the thing that you're supposed to be doing as a creative. And even I say that for myself, because I've always considered myself I do love to write, and I would love to write books one day. And someday I hope to translate my creativity into the written form. But for now, I just have to give myself a little grace, because when I think about trying to sit down to write, it creates stress for me because I don't really have the bandwidth to put into being a photographer and running a photography business and also writing this book that I want to write. So I feel like you just have to give yourself a little grace when you're a creative. And if something that you feel like you want to do as a creative is not really happening, or is creating stress, it's, keep looking.
That's beautiful.
Just keep looking for that thing that brings joy. And I mean, Matt, I remember our first conversation when you came to me and you were talking about starting your business, and you were just so excited, right? There was just so much excitement in that. And that's why I knew in that first conversation, I was like, oh yeah, you're going to be successful. And why I knew that is because you were excited. You were passionate about it. It was like, you hadn't even shot a single thing yet, I don't think.
Anything at all yet. I hadn't even bought a new camera
you're going
yet.
To be successful at that. You should do that. You've got the passion, right? So I think it comes first from within, and having something that makes you excited and makes you feel alive.
Well, it should be said as well that, starting my business when I did, and you were pretty much the first person I talked to, because I was like, I didn't know if it wasn't going to be commercials yet.
Yeah.
But I knew I wanted to do like maybe some kind of promo video, and weddings was definitely a big part of it. And to say that you inspired me and encouraged me, those words aren't enough, because knowing, for one, seeing a person who made a living with a camera was baseline, exciting for me to even see that happen. But you brought me along on gigs that you probably shouldn't have, because I sucked. and you did it anyway. And you were so gracious and kind, and gave me all the information that I ever wanted. And you were so, you're so sharing with everything, and also just encouraging and pushing me along. And here we are today. And I love still working with you. And it's so much fun.
Too. I always am so excited. That's why I was like, of course I'm going to do your podcast.
Yeah.
So, and I just wanted to say too, that I think back, Matt, and like you and I have been in the creative space for a very long time. I mean, sure, there was like a big gap, but I don't know if, Josette, do you know that we went to high school together?
No, I didn't even know that. I know that
really?
I knew that I knew that you'd done wedding stuff together. I didn't realize you were in high school together. Oh my gosh.
Yes, and in fact, I at some point, and I'm sure I could dig them up somewhere, but there's photos of us.
I'm gonna need to see those.
In backstage, like we were in musicals and things together.
Oh my God! Oh no, stop!
Like,
You guys did a play together, Matt. This has to stop. By the way, we have a running joke on the podcast that like we keep interviewing people that Matt has done plays with, and now you're another one of them, Francis. That's so funny.
It's so funny. Yeah.
That is so good.
High school plays. Well, it's so Frances's two younger sisters, her sister Louise and I are the same class, and then Jessie right below me. So it's kind of like these, stepping stones. And so her family, like we just all, grew up together and stuff. And so now as we're adults, it's so much fun, because I've done a bunch of work for Louise's company. She has a veterinary clinic in the mountains of Colorado.
Oh my gosh, amazing.
So our life back in the day when we did all these plays and musicals together has flash forward 25 years, and here we are.
And we're still in this creative space together. We've done all this fun things. But yeah, I've got like photos somewhere of like baby Matt and Francis in our like, Brigadoon costumes or whatever.
Find it. Yeah, I got to see this.
Okay, I'll dig them up. But yeah, and in fact, I was like, I would like to say that we aren't much changed from those days.
No, we're better. Definitely better.
It's funny.
We're better.
Yeah. But yes, no, Josette, Matt and I actually go way back. And so for me, it's just like, it's so great to have people in my life that I've known for a long, a lifetime almost, and have be able to be in a creative space with people that I know and love from.
Well, and isn't it wonderful to have witnesses to the journey? Because I think that this creative path is it can be so tumultuous and hard, especially, and as you're saying, you've been solo for a lot of this, like you're doing this by yourself. And I think to have people witness the journey and see what you've gone through, and really, to be honest, to make this wild success that you are today. I mean, that's really beautiful that you have people like Matt. Couldn't think of a better person to have like that, because he is very special in that way.
He is, yes. And I mean, even I was talking to my husband this morning and reminding him, like, I'm doing that podcast. And he was like, can you talk to Matt about the commercial I want to do? I was like, probably not on the podcast. But I was like, well, we can circle back to that, certainly. So,
we'll get to it. Yeah.
So Bryce is still trying to he needs you.
Yeah, good. Well, I need you guys. So this is working out nicely.
Oh, gosh. This has been so lovely. Josette, I'm so happy to meet you. And where are you? My
little dark closet that I'm in is actually in Los Angeles.
Okay.
So I'm here in East LA in Silver Lake.
Okay.
Yeah. So
well, if you ever make your way out here, I would love an opportunity to meet you in person.
Oh my gosh, are you kidding? Yes, I would love that.
Come to Colorado, please let me know.
I definitely need to make another trip, because it's been far too long. And I would love to come and see you in person. And this has been so wonderful. It is always lovely to connect with a fellow witch, and I am very glad that you are doing what you're doing in the world. And please keep making that fine art. My goodness, because I want to see more.
Wait, one more time, you have to tell me this name of this woman in LA that was in San Diego.
She's Amanda Yates Garcia. I'll send you her on Instagram though. She wrote a book called Initiated, which is just extraordinary.
Okay.
Yeah, but
well,
she's
I'm definitely going to be looking that
the
up.
Oracle of LA. Yes, she's
Love
wonderful.
Love that so much.
I'm glad I could connect a couple of witches.
Listen,
I know, right?
you're doing God's work, honey. Just know it.
I know.
You are. Well, you guys, I love this. I'm so excited to listen. I've now queued all of your podcasts. So
Yay!
Thank you.
I'll be so excited to hear them all.
Yeah.
It was so great to have you on. So good to see you. I'm
So
so
good to
glad
see
things
you
are going
too.
great. Yeah, and we'll circle back on the commercial
Okay.
shortly, okay?
Yeah, we will.
Yeah.
Yay.
Well, give my love to Bryce as well, please.
I will. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Lots
This
of
has been
love. Bye,
lovely.
Francis.
Okay. Bye-bye.